He was a man's man, very prototypical in that way. And Natalie was always his rock, like the person that supported him and was behind him.
The bottle of insulin was concealed inside the refrigerator in the kitchen behind some other items on one of the shelves inside the door.
She's thinking she's being clever, when actually, by giving too much information, she led the police directly back to her.
Michael Cochran was a youth sports coach in West Virginia, trusted by his community. His wife Natalie murdered him with insulin to hide a $2.5 million Ponzi scheme. The fraud was falling apart. Investors wanted answers. Michael was about to discover everything. On February 6, 2019, Natalie gave him her blood pressure pills. Hours later, he collapsed. She photographed him on the kitchen floor instead of calling 911. The murder weapon was insulin, borrowed months earlier under a fake cancer diagnosis. It took investigators 6 years to prove it. This is how trust became a weapon, and how the one thing no one asked her led them straight back. Welcome. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are you doing while you listen? Driving, working, cooking, or taking a quiet moment for yourself? Just a quick note. This story includes some recreated details added for narrative purposes. What matters most is the message it carries. Everyone in Daniels knew Michael Cochran as the man who gave. He coached the youth sports teams, all of them. Whatever the season, whatever the sport, Michael was there on the field. He organized fundraisers for the local school, standing in parking lots on Saturday mornings, collecting donations. He once bought a home for a widow in the community, someone who had nowhere else to turn. Michael Cochran was 38 years old. In a small town like Daniels, tucked into Raleigh County, West Virginia, that kind of generosity carried weight. In southern West Virginia, youth athletics pulled communities together more than anything else. Parents filled bleachers on Friday nights. Kids wore their team jerseys to school, and Michael was at the center of it all. People knew him, trusted him. When parents needed a coach, they called Michael. When the school needed help, they called Michael. When a neighbor was in trouble, they called Michael. He was always the first to volunteer, always the last to leave. A devoted father to his children, a man who believed in helping people the way some people believe in breathing. He believed it was just what you did, no questions asked. His wife, Natalie, handled the business side of their company. They'd been married since high school, built a life together in the town where they grew up. High school sweethearts who never left. Tactical Solutions Group, the company was called. Government contracts, Natalie explained to friends and family, weapons, medical supplies, equipment for federal agencies. Michael found the contracts, pursued the leads, made the connections. Natalie managed the operations, the finances, the details he didn't have time for between coaching and fundraising and being the man everyone counted on. He trusted her completely. What does it cost a man to trust completely? In Michael's case, it would cost him everything. He didn't know the company was a fraud, didn't know the contracts didn't exist, didn't know that while he was coaching kids and organizing fundraisers and being the face everyone in Daniels believed in, Natalie was collecting millions of dollars on promises she had no intention of keeping. He believed in the work, believed they were helping investors profit, believed his wife when she told him the business was thriving, that the money was real, that everything was legitimate. That belief never wavered, not once. The morning of February 6, 2019, started ordinary. Natalie told Michael she wasn't feeling well. He did what he'd always done. He went out to get her coffee. Something small, something kind. The sort of gesture he'd made 1,000 times before. He drove through the familiar streets, past the sports fields where he coached, past the school where he volunteered, the coffee shop on the corner, the same order he always got. The morning was cold, quiet, Daniels in winter. the kind of morning where you could see your breath. When he came home, coffee in hand, everything looked normal. The house was quiet. Natalie was there, their children getting ready for school, morning light coming through the kitchen windows, the smell of coffee, the ordinary rhythm of a Wednesday morning. For a few more hours, it would all feel ordinary. He had no idea it was the last time he'd do something so simple. The last time morning would feel like morning. The last time he'd be the man everyone in Daniels knew, the coach who stayed late, the neighbor who gave without asking for anything back, the husband who believed every word his wife told him. By that afternoon, Michael Cochran would be unconscious on his kitchen floor. 5 days later, he would be dead at 38 years old. And the woman he'd trusted completely, the woman he'd built a life with since they were teenagers, would be the reason why. Everyone in Daniels knew Michael Cochran as a man who gave. He gave his time, his energy, his money, his trust. He gave everything he had to everyone who asked. No one knew what his wife was taking. What Natalie was taking started in June 2017, when she walked away from a pharmacy career to start Tactical Solutions Group. She told friends and family she'd gotten the idea from a movie. War dogs, government contracts, weapons, medical supplies, equipment for federal agencies. The pitch was simple: invest in contract fulfillment, and the returns would be massive. We have this really cool idea for a company, and we think it could make you a lot of money, she told them. The numbers sounded too good to pass up. If you put in 10,000, you'll get back 60. People believed her. She was a professional, a pharmacist with an MBA, someone who'd specialized in diabetes care at CVS, trusted enough that the company had paid for her graduate degree. She was known in the community, and she was married to Michael, the man everyone trusted. Natalie targeted people carefully: family, friends, businessmen and lawyers and dentists, people she knew had money to spare, people who trusted her. Michael believed it too. He was the face of the company, finding contracts, making connections, pitching clients. He thought it was real, thought they were helping investors profit, thought the business was thriving. Natalie handled everything else: the operations, the finances, the details. Over 18 months, she collected $2.5 million from 12 investors, and she spent it. Boats, motorcycles, new cars, multiple properties, lavish vacations, bringing friends and family along and paying for everything. Luxury handbags, a pair of bulldog puppies. She wasn't hiding the money. She was showing it off. They had an office in Beckley, a home in Daniels, a lifestyle that looked like success. In fraud, trust is a weapon. Without it, you can't get anywhere. Natalie had spent years building that trust. As a pharmacist, as a neighbor, as Michael's wife. And when she asked people to invest, they believed her because of who she was, or who they thought she was. But by early 2019, the money was running out. Investors were asking for their returns. Natalie made excuses: government audits, bank delays, wire transfer problems. There was always something. The lies were getting harder to maintain. Then Natalie made a request that looked like nothing at the time. She went to Jennifer, their neighbor and lifelong friend. Jennifer had a diabetic child and kept insulin at home. Natalie told her she had cancer, said she was so sick from chemotherapy and needed insulin to counteract the side effects. If she could just borrow a bottle, she'd pay it back later. Jennifer sent it over that same day. A neighbor helping a sick friend, no questions asked. That's what you did in Daniels. What Jennifer didn't know was that Natalie was a pharmacist who'd specialized in diabetes care, someone who understood insulin better than almost anyone, what it did, how it worked, how dangerous it could be. She knew exactly what insulin could do. A healthy person injected with insulin doesn't just get sick, their blood sugar crashes. If the dose is high enough, they lose consciousness, their organs start to fail. And if they don't get treatment fast enough, they die. Insulin leaves almost no trace in the body. It breaks down quickly. And in 2019, standard autopsies didn't test for it. A pharmacist asking to borrow insulin for fake cancer treatment, choosing the one substance that could kill someone and disappear. No one thought to ask why. Natalie told her friends they could get rich if they invested with her. She told her neighbor she needed insulin for chemotherapy. Neither one was true. And by early 2019, the lies were catching up faster than she could contain them. Investors were demanding their money. The Ponzi scheme was collapsing, and Michael, the man who believed every word she'd told him, was starting to ask questions she couldn't answer. The lies were catching up faster than she could contain them. A few weeks after Michael's funeral, an investor walked into the West Virginia State Police headquarters with a simple question. Where was his money? He had given Michael Cochran $70,000 to invest through TSG. Now, Michael was dead, and Natalie would not return his calls. When she did answer, she had excuses, but no money. Tim Bledsoe, a retired lieutenant with the West Virginia State Police who now worked financial crimes, took the case. He opened an investigation, a fraud investigation, not a murder investigation, just fraud. Bledsoe started where fraud cases always start, with the numbers. He traced wire transfers, interviewed other investors, built a timeline. Michael's name appeared on every document. But Michael was dead. That left Natalie. Bledsoe called her in for an interview. She arrived on time, calm and composed. She sat across from him and answered every question with practiced ease. She explained the business. TSG had struggled after Michael died unexpectedly. She was working to sort through accounts and make investors whole. It was complicated. Michael had handled most transactions. She was doing her best under difficult circumstances. Investors were understandably anxious. She would make it right. Bledsoe asked about Michael's death. Natalie's expression shifted to measured grief. She repeated the story she had told everyone else. Michael had been using bodybuilding supplements. He worked out constantly, wanted to stay in peak condition. The supplements probably caused the hypoglycemic episodes. Doctors ran tests but found nothing definitive. It was tragic and sudden, but it was natural causes. Bledsoe nodded, took notes, let her talk. He was investigating fraud, not death. But something in her delivery felt rehearsed. The one thing you can always count on with people who run a Ponzi scheme. They will do anything to keep it going. Natalie called Bledsoe a few days later. She wanted another meeting. She said she had more information about TSG. Bledsoe agreed. They met again at the police station. Natalie sat in the same chair, hands folded, eyes steady. Then she said something no one had asked her to say. I want to talk about the insulin. Bledsoe's pen stopped moving. No one had mentioned insulin. Not in the fraud investigation. Not in any previous conversation. Not in any interview. Natalie brought it up herself, unprompted. She explained that Michael had borrowed insulin from a coworker at the pharmacy. She said he was using it for bodybuilding purposes. Something about muscle growth. She said it probably caused the hypoglycemic episodes that killed him. Then she made a request that turned Bledsoe's professional instinct into certainty. She asked him to stop investigating Michael's death. Bledsoe leaned back. Natalie was not a suspect in a death investigation. There was no active death investigation into Michael's passing. Bledsoe was looking into financial fraud. But Natalie wanted the inquiry into how Michael died to end. She wanted everyone to accept the bodybuilding supplement explanation and move on. She wanted the questions to stop. Bledsoe had interviewed hundreds of people over 30 years in law enforcement. He knew what grief looked like. He knew what guilt looked like when people tried to hide it. This was not grief. She said the one word no one had asked her to say. When a spouse dies suddenly and unexpectedly, the surviving partner usually wants answers. They push for additional autopsies. They demand more toxicology reports. They ask questions. Until someone gives them a cause of death they can understand. They do not walk into a police station and volunteer detailed information about insulin when no investigator has mentioned it. They do not ask law enforcement to stop looking into how their husband died. No spouse does that unless there's something to hide. Bledsoe closed his notebook. He thanked Natalie for her time and walked her to the door. Then, he returned to his desk and made a phone call. The fraud investigation would continue. But now, there would be another investigation running parallel to it, one that started with a single question. Why would a healthy man who was not diabetic have insulin in his system? Between late March and June 2019, investigators accumulated enough evidence for a search warrant. Bledsoe's question had an answer waiting inside the Cochran home in Daniels. They just needed permission to look. The warrant came through in mid-2019. Police arrived at the house on a weekday morning. Natalie was home. She was not arrested. This was a search for evidence of fraud and potential homicide. They were methodical. Every room, every drawer, every device. They seized Natalie's phone first. The forensic team downloaded everything. Text messages between Natalie and Michael, call logs, emails, browser history. The data extraction took hours. When the report came back, it was nearly 1,900 pages. 1,900 pages of texts between husband and wife, spanning months of TSG operations. The messages told a story Bledsoe had suspected, but needed confirmed. Michael had no idea TSG was fraudulent. None. The texts showed a man who believed everything his wife told him about the business. He repeated what she said to investors because he thought it was true. He made the calls she asked him to make because he trusted her judgment. He reassured people when she told him to reassure them because he believed the money was being invested exactly as promised. He was the mouthpiece for a scheme he did not know existed. He thought she was doing exactly what he asked. He trusted her with the business, with the investors, with their future. Michael never knew. He trusted her completely, right up until the end. There was no conspiracy between them. No shared guilt. No moment in those 1,900 pages where Michael acknowledged the fraud or discussed covering it up. Michael Cochran had been used. His name, his reputation in the Daniels community, his relationships built over years of coaching youth sports, Natalie had weaponized all of it, and he never knew. The man who died on February 6, 2019 died believing his wife was managing investments legitimately. The texts cleared Michael. They also deepened the case against Natalie. She had lied to everyone, including the husband she would later kill to keep those lies from surfacing. Then the search team moved to the kitchen. They opened the refrigerator. Standard procedure in a death investigation involving suspected poisoning. Check the medicine cabinet. Check the bathroom. Check the kitchen. Check anywhere controlled substances could be stored or concealed. One of the officers searching the kitchen noticed it on the inside door shelf, behind a container of juice, partially obscured by condiment bottles, a small pharmaceutical bottle with a clinical label. Insulin. The officer photographed it in place before touching it. Then he bagged it as evidence. The label matched the description Jennifer had given in her interview. This was the bottle Natalie had borrowed in late 2018, the bottle she claimed Michael needed for a cancer diagnosis that did not exist, the bottle she said he was using for bodybuilding purposes. Bledsoe stood in that kitchen and ran through the facts. No one in the Cochran house was diabetic. Michael was not diabetic. Natalie was not diabetic. They had no children. No elderly relatives lived with them. There was no legitimate medical reason for anyone in that house to possess insulin. One bottle. One purpose. The bottle sat in an evidence bag at the West Virginia State Police lab within hours. It was physical proof that Natalie had obtained insulin under false pretenses and kept it concealed in her home. But possession was not murder. Having the bottle did not prove she had used it to kill Michael, and Michael had been cremated after the first autopsy. There was no blood left to test for insulin levels, no tissue to analyze for injection sites. Bledsoe had motive. The Ponzi scheme about to collapse. He had means. A bottle of insulin obtained through deception. He had the weapon itself, hidden in the refrigerator, but he did not have proof the weapon had been deployed. Not yet. An insulin bottle concealed behind other items in the refrigerator door. No one in that house was diabetic. No one had any medical need for it. A bottle with no purpose in that house except one. But they still could not prove that bottle had killed Michael. Not without scientific evidence. 4 years after the first exhumation came back inconclusive, they tried again. The insulin bottle from the refrigerator gave them motive and means. Now, they needed proof the weapon had been deployed. In 2023, a court ordered Michael Cochran's body exhumed for the second time. The first autopsy in 2019 had found hypoglycemia as the cause of death, but could not determine the source. 4 years of investigation had changed the question. This time, they were not looking for what killed Michael. They were looking for proof of how Natalie had done it. Tom Truman, prosecuting attorney for Raleigh County, knew the case had no DNA, no fingerprints, no video, no confession. Ashley Agard, assistant prosecuting attorney, worked with Truman to piece together the circumstantial evidence. They had the insulin bottle. They had the text messages proving Michael's innocence. They had Natalie's unprompted mention of insulin to Bledsoe, but they needed science to close the gap between suspicion and proof. The forensic pathologist from Texas had worked insulin murder cases in West Virginia before. He knew what the pattern looked like. He requested Michael's complete medical records from the hospital stay on February 6, 2019. Then he built a timeline. He created a timetable of every blood glucose level throughout the hospital stay, every test, every reading, every intervention. The medical staff had treated Michael aggressively that day, trying to stabilize his blood sugar. They had given him glucose. They had monitored him continuously. The doctors were fighting to save his life, but the numbers told a story the medical team in 2019 had not been looking for. A glucose chart is a timeline written in numbers, and this one told a story of intervention, not accident. The pattern had a name: refractory hypoglycemia. The blood sugar would be treated, then drop back down. It would not stabilize the way it should in a healthy person. The medical team would administer glucose, and Michael's levels would rise temporarily. Then they would crash again. Up, down, up, down. The cycle repeated throughout his final hours. A healthy body does not do that. Even a body experiencing hypoglycemia from natural causes responds to treatment and stabilizes. Michael's body never stabilized. The glucose kept crashing despite aggressive medical intervention. Something was overriding every attempt to bring his levels back to normal. Before I tell you what that pattern meant, are you still here right now? Comment A if the chart proves it, or B if you still have doubt, and add one short reason why. A quick note: the next part includes some recreated details for narrative purposes to convey the core findings. The message is what matters. There was only one explanation for that pattern: exogenous insulin. Insulin from an outside source, administered to someone who did not need it. Each time the medical staff raised Michael's blood sugar, something in his system was driving it back down. That something was not Michael's pancreas producing too much insulin. It was insulin introduced from outside his body, continuing to work in his system, overwhelming every medical effort to counteract it. The pattern proved what the body had been trying to say all along. The pathologist reviewed the glucose timeline against the known facts. Natalie Cochran was a pharmacist with specialized knowledge of diabetes medications and insulin protocols. She had borrowed an insulin bottle from her coworker Jennifer under false pretenses in late 2018, claiming Michael had cancer and needed it. That bottle had been found concealed in the Cochran home refrigerator in 2019, in a house where no one had a legitimate medical need for insulin. And on February 6, 2019, Michael Cochran's glucose levels had exhibited the exact pattern consistent with exogenous insulin administration. The pathologist ruled it homicide via exogenous insulin administration. That indicated Michael had been given insulin. That was how they knew they had their murder weapon. The glucose chart delivered what 4 years of investigation had been building toward: scientific certainty. A pharmacist with diabetes expertise, a bottle borrowed under a fabricated cancer diagnosis, a glucose pattern that could not be explained by natural causes. They knew the murder weapon now. They knew how it worked. They knew who had access to it and the knowledge to use it. Now they had to prove she had used it on February 6, 2019. The glucose chart proved what happened. Now the question was how. February 6, 2019, the day they were supposed to fly to Bank of America. The day Michael was going to get answers about his investment business. That morning, Natalie told Michael she was sick. She canceled the flight. Michael was angry. He had been planning this trip for days. He needed to understand what was happening with TSG. Investors were asking questions he could not answer. Don't worry, we'll still go. This needs to happen. But they did not go. Instead, Natalie gave Michael 2 of her blood pressure pills. She told him they would help. Michael took them. By 12:30 that afternoon, Michael Cochran was unconscious on the kitchen floor. Natalie did not call 911. She took out her phone and photographed him lying there. Then she sent text messages. 17 different people. The contractors who worked for the Cochrans received a text around 12:30. That afternoon, Michael was unconscious. Natalie needed help moving him. She texted friends. She texted family members. She texted a physician's assistant. She took a photograph instead of calling 911. The physician's assistant came to the house. She looked at Michael, unconscious and unresponsive on the floor. She urged immediate hospitalization. Natalie refused. She said, "Let him sleep." There was nothing to sleep off. Michael had not been drinking. He had not taken drugs. He had collapsed suddenly and completely. But Natalie insisted he just needed rest. Chris, a law enforcement officer and Michael's close friend, was one of several people Natalie summoned that day. He arrived and saw Michael on the floor. He looked at Natalie. He looked at the physician's assistant, who was still urging the hospital. Then he made a decision. He is going to the hospital, and I am going to take him. Chris overrode Natalie's refusal and got Michael into a vehicle. They rushed him to the emergency room. By the time they arrived, Michael's condition was critical. His blood glucose was critically low. There was no way to know how long it had been that low. The medical team intubated him immediately. They worked to stabilize his glucose levels, but the numbers kept crashing. The same refractory pattern the forensic pathologist would identify 4 years later. Michael was transferred to Charleston Area Medical Center in Charleston, West Virginia. The doctors asked Natalie what Michael had taken. She told them he had overdosed on a bodybuilding supplement from Mexico. She said he had been using it to improve his fitness. The doctors treated him based on that information. For 5 days, Michael Cochran remained on life support. The medical team could not stabilize him. His brain had been without adequate glucose for too long. On February 11, 2019, Natalie made the decision to remove life support. Jennifer was there in those final hours. She had loaned Natalie the insulin bottle months earlier, believing Michael had cancer. Now, she was watching Michael die. She asked Natalie how she could help. What did Natalie need? Natalie turned to Jennifer and said, "Help me hold this pillow over his face." Jennifer didn't understand what that request meant. The courtroom, years later, did. Jennifer refused. She stepped back. She did not help with the pillow, but the request itself, calm, direct, matter-of-fact, stayed with her. Years later, when investigators asked what she remembered from those final hours, Jennifer would testify about that moment, about the woman who had borrowed insulin for a fake cancer diagnosis, asking for help to smother her dying husband. Michael Cochran died a few hours after life support was removed, February 11, 2019. He was 38 years old, a healthy man who coached youth sports, who believed his wife was legitimately investing money for their community, who had planned to fly to Bank of America to get answers. His death made no sense to the doctors. It made no sense to his friends. It made no sense to anyone who knew him. A perfectly healthy 38-year-old man does not just collapse and die without cause, except there was a cause. And the woman who caused it was standing in that hospital room asking for a pillow. But proving she had done it would take nearly 6 more years. Those 6 years passed. Nearly 6 years after Michael Cochran died, Natalie Cochran sat in a courtroom facing a murder charge with no DNA, no fingerprints, no video, no confession. January 15, 2025. The trial began in Raleigh County Courthouse, West Virginia. Tom Truman stood before the jury and acknowledged what every person in that room already knew. Prosecutors love to have DNA, fingerprints, videos, confessions. We had none of them. What they had instead was a pattern, a glucose chart, a borrowed insulin bottle, text messages proving the victim's innocence, and the words Natalie had said that no one asked her to say. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 17 witnesses took the stand. Every piece of evidence was circumstantial. There was no forensic proof that Natalie had injected Michael with insulin. There was no video of her administering it. There was no physical evidence tying her hands to the act itself. What the prosecution built instead was a timeline of motive, means, and opportunity, and the behavior of a woman who could not stop incriminating herself. Michael's parents sat on one side of the courtroom, waiting for justice nearly 6 years in the making. On the other side sat those who still believed Natalie deserved mercy. The courtroom was divided, but the evidence was not. Sometimes a murder case isn't solved by what you find. It's solved by what the killer can't help but reveal. Chris took the stand. He testified about February 6, 2019, about arriving at the Cochran home and finding Michael unconscious on the kitchen floor, about Natalie's refusal to call for help, her insistence that Michael just needed sleep, about making the decision that saved Michael's life temporarily but could not save him permanently. His voice broke as he repeated the words he had said that day. "He is going to the hospital, and I am going to take him." Then Jennifer testified. She explained how Natalie had borrowed the insulin bottle in late 2018, claiming Michael had been diagnosed with cancer.
Natalie tells Jennifer that she was so sick from her chemo and needed to take insulin, but if she could just borrow a bottle, she would pay it back later.
She described loaning it to her friend, believing she was helping someone she cared about through a medical crisis. Then she told the courtroom about February 11, 2019, about standing in the hospital room as Michael lay dying on life support, about asking Natalie how she could help. Jennifer looked at the jury and repeated Natalie's response, word for word. "Help me hold this pillow over his face." The courtroom went silent. That single sentence, calm, direct, matter-of-fact, spoken in the final hours of a man's life, a request so chilling It had stayed with Jennifer for 6 years, a moment that revealed not grief, but something darker. Natalie's children took the stand to plead for mercy, asking the jury to let them see their mother again in 20 years. They spoke of losing their father and facing the prospect of losing their mother forever. They were children caught between the victim and the killer, between justice and mercy. The courtroom listened. But mercy had limits. For nearly 6 years, Michael's parents had waited for this moment. January 29, 2025. The jury deliberated. Then they returned with a verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. The conviction rested not on a smoking gun, but on the accumulation of everything Natalie had done and said. The Ponzi scheme that gave her motive. The insulin bottle she had no legitimate reason to possess. The glucose chart proving exogenous insulin administration. The unprompted mention of insulin to Bledsoe when no one had asked. The photograph she took instead of calling 911. The pillow she requested in a dying man's hospital room. A conviction built entirely on pattern, motive, and the words she could not help but say. Natalie Cochran, who had maintained a composed demeanor throughout the 3-week trial, shed a single tear when the verdict was read. Just one. The judge announced the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. She would never see the outside of a prison again. She was already serving 11 years for the financial fraud that had stolen $2.5 million from her community. Now she would serve the rest of her life for the murder that had covered it up. The story did not end with a verdict. It ended with what was left behind. After the verdict, after the sentencing, after the courtroom emptied, what remained was absence. Natalie Cochran began serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was already 11 years into her sentence for the financial fraud that had stolen $2.5 million from investors who trusted her. Now, she would spend the rest of her life behind bars for the murder that had covered it up. She would never walk free again. She would never see her children grow into adults, never attend a graduation or a wedding, never hold a grandchild. Life without parole means exactly what it says. Her children lost both parents to the same story. One murdered by insulin on a kitchen floor. One locked away for that murder and the fraud that preceded it. They grew up in the shadow of a Ponzi scheme and a homicide trial, carrying the weight of a father who died trusting the wrong person and a mother who killed to keep her secrets buried. No verdict could give them back what they lost. No sentence could restore the childhood that ended on February 6, 2019. Some losses can't be repaid. Some absences can't be filled. Somewhere in the Daniels community, a youth sports season started without the coach who used to run it. Michael Cochran had been the kind of man parents trusted with their kids, the kind of coach who showed up early and stayed late, the kind of person a community rallies around. When he died suddenly in February 2019, people grieved a man they thought had been taken by a medical tragedy. They did not know he had been murdered. They did not know his wife had been running a massive fraud scheme. They did not know the man they trusted had been used as a shield for lies he never knew existed. Everyone knew Michael Cochran as a man who gave. No one knew what his wife was taking until it was too late. The trial revealed what the investigators had pieced together over 6 years. Natalie had built TSG on a foundation of trust. She had used Michael's name, his reputation, his relationships. She had borrowed insulin under a fabricated cancer diagnosis. She had photographed her dying husband instead of calling for help. She had asked for a pillow in his final hours. And when investigators started asking questions about fraud, she had mentioned insulin. Unprompted, unrequested, unnecessary. In fraud, trust is a weapon. She used it until there was nothing left. The glucose chart proved the method. The text messages proved Michael's innocence. The insulin bottle proved premeditation. But the case turned on the things Natalie said that no one asked her to say. The insulin she mentioned to Bledsoe when he was investigating fraud, not murder. The pillow she requested from Jennifer when Michael was dying. The words that came out of her mouth because she could not help herself. What did she actually say to him in those final conscious hours? No one will ever know. Michael was unconscious on that kitchen floor by 12:30 in the afternoon on February 6, 2019. Whatever happened in the hours before that, whatever Natalie said or did not say, whatever Michael understood or did not understand about the business he thought was legitimate, died with him. The only person who knows the full truth of those final hours is the woman serving life in prison, and she has given no confession, no explanation, no apology. The trial delivered justice. It did not deliver answers to every question. It could not bring Michael back. It could not undo the fraud or restore the stolen money. It could not give the children their father or their childhood. Justice has limits. Verdicts close cases. They do not fill the space left by a 38-year-old man who should still be coaching youth sports in a West Virginia community. Michael Cochran was a husband, a father, a coach. He was a man who believed his wife when she told him the business was legitimate. He was planning to fly to Bank of America on February 6, 2019, to get answers about accounts he trusted her to manage. He never made that flight. He never got those answers. She thought she was being clever. But the one thing no one asked her was the one thing that led them straight back to her. In the end, trust was not just her weapon. It was her undoing. Michael Cochran was 38 years old, a coach, a father, a man who trusted the wrong person with everything he had. This story is not just about fraud or murder. It's about how trust can be weaponized by the people closest to us. Natalie Cochran built a $2.5 million lie on the foundation of her husband's good name. When that lie threatened to collapse, she chose murder over truth. She borrowed insulin under a fabricated cancer diagnosis. She photographed her dying husband instead of calling for help. She asked for a pillow in his final hours. But here's the lesson this case leaves behind. The very thing she thought made her clever became her undoing. The unprompted mention of insulin to an investigator who wasn't even asking about it. The word she couldn't help but say. Trust was her weapon, and her own words became the evidence that exposed her. Michael's children lost both parents to the same story. One to murder. One to a life sentence. His community lost a coach who showed up for their kids. That absence can never be filled. If this story stayed with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what struck you most. If you found value in this, consider subscribing. It helps this channel reach others who need to hear these stories. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that trust should never be given blindly. Thank you for listening all the way through. This story is based on a real case, with some scenes dramatized for narrative purposes. My deepest respect goes to the victim's family and all those affected by this tragedy.